Sam Stanton! Get in there! Come on! Best player in the championship.
Oh no, 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 Jordan Monroe. Oh no, 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 my wee laddie. I don't wanna go to Idaho. I'd rather stay here in Kirkcaldy.
Mountains, waterfalls, lava, hot springs, lakes, rivers, and French fries. According to TripAdvisor, these are the top 7 reasons to go to Idaho. But I don't want to go there, and you don't either, because this is the Oh No No podcast, and we're here to talk about Raith Rovers 1, Dunfermline Athletic 0. My name's Duncan Cameron. I'm your host for this afternoon. And joining me, we have a man who saw his team score a last-minute winner yesterday. It's Blair Hopcroft. We have a man who saw his team score a last-minute winner yesterday. It's Scott Fleming.
Right.
We've got a man who saw his team score a last-minute winner yesterday. It's John Greer.
Hello.
A man who saw his team score a last-minute winner yesterday. It's Robbie Weir.
Hello.
And making his debut, incredibly, another man who saw his team score a last-minute winner yesterday. It's Sandy Power.
Hello.
Oh, where did you nick that?
Stealing the patter. Plus, seeing as everyone was saying hello, I might as well do the hello.
That's it, trademark. So we are obviously going to talk in great detail about a thoroughly enjoyable afternoon yesterday that, of course, Blair, you and I predicted would finish with a comprehensive and very comfortable 1-0 win to the Rovers. So we will get on to the fun stuff soon enough. But let's start with the first half. And Robbie, why don't you get us started? Your thoughts on kind of how the team's set up and how that first 45 unfolded.
Yeah, so the lineups stayed the same, and that was a reasonable enough thing to expect. I know that when we saw the team lines, there was a bit of speculation. Maybe Liam Dick would have moved to centre back and McGill at left back, but he stayed the same, kept McGill sort of playing almost on the attacking left. And then, it was a very stuffy performance. First half, we were limited really to that one shot from Lewis Vaughan. Other than that, nothing really of note. Kevin Dabrowski had some really good saves throughout the game. But yeah, just a very, without sort of glossing over the performance, because the result, yeah, we got a bit lucky there, and thoroughly enjoyable result. But yeah, first half, solid enough performance without doing too much. A lot of huffing and puffing. I think Dunfermline pressed us really well, to their credit. That caused us to go long, and without Jack Hamilton in the side, I said to Sean McGuigan, I bumped into him at half time actually, and I said to him, it's like we're playing with Jack Hamilton, but Jack Hamilton's not on the pitch because we're playing this sort of long, direct football, but we don't have the target man up top. I love Callum Smith and Lewis Vaughan to bits, but they're never going to be target men just due to the sort of physical nature of it. But yeah, first half, I think we were lucky to go in 0-0. You could see that towards the end of the half, some really big saves from Kev. But yeah, as the game went on, you had this sort of slight feeling that, yeah, there is definitely something that we can potentially take from it. So.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. That the first kind of 10 minutes, I thought, were so frenetic and so kind of panicky that if Dunfermline had scored in that period, I don't know what would have happened. But yeah, the longer it went on, they weren't really creating a huge amount. It started to become quite an interesting game, just the way it was going through. Sandy, how about you? How do you feel about the kind of the opening period of the game?
It was quite funny because I kind of related to the game that we played at Starks in the League Cup, in that it didn't seem like we were playing to our kind of flowing potential. There was a lot of kind of stray passes going, and it seemed quite deliberate at times, even when we did have possession. I think Ian Murray touched upon it in his post-match video that he was just want the players to be a bit more confident in their passing and not worry too much and play with a bit more freedom. And I think that did show in the second half. I think it certainly benefited us that Benedictus was risked in the first half, and then he was taken off. I thought when Benedictus left us, I kind of thought, well, that's not too big a thing, perhaps. Maybe he's lost a bit of pace, but he's actually done incredibly well at Dunfermline by all accounts. So I think him going off was actually quite a good thing. He was actually doing pretty well in their defence. So in terms of our play in the second half, obviously we were a bit more on the front foot. We created a few more chances, and I think Dunfermline kind of ran out of steam a little bit, and we just had that little bit extra in the second half that kind of took us over the line.
Yeah, I think the substitutions played a big part in as much as I think their substitutions made them worse and our substitutions made us better, which is not for the first time this season.
Yeah, I definitely think that Connolly coming on and Easton coming on really made a difference. I don't think Mullen was getting a lot of joy against
Josh Edwards.
Josh Edwards, that's the one. Josh Edwards. So yeah, it was obviously Mullen's not the slowest player on the face of the earth, but there was a lot of times that Josh Edwards was just eating him up for pace. I think that's kind of, he played some lovely balls in at times, Mullen, but he wasn't having a lot of joy. So I think just getting a little bit more energy on when you brought Connolly and Easton on really helped against possibly what was a tiring Dunfermline side.
Yeah, I mean, far be it from me to criticise Ian Murray and his tactical approach. I did think, though, that he kind of played into James McPake's hands a little bit with the way that he set that team up. And as much as you said, Robbie, they were kind of playing a way that would have suited Jack Hamilton, but without Jack Hamilton. So you've got three centre-halves there, and they're always going to be able to manage sort of Vaughan and Smith relatively well, because there's three of them, even with Benedictus kind of short on movement. And then with the two wing backs, Miguel's never going to bomb forward and hit that byline naturally. And Mullen, that's not really his game either. So those two wing backs, ideally you want to be turning them, you want to be getting in behind them. And we never threatened to do that at all until we put on Connolly and Easton. And then suddenly Josh Edwards and Aaron Comrie on the other side had to actually worry about what was happening. And you could see then suddenly Dunfermline couldn't get out kind of anywhere near as much. I think definitely that was the big kind of turning point. Scott, let's come to you next. What were your thoughts on, well, let's call it the first kind of hour, probably up until the substitutions started rolling in. Were you worried as that game unfolded, or did you feel like it was relatively comfortable?
I think I'm not sure I was ever worried, but I was just a little bit. I was actually quite confused with how we played the first 15 minutes, because it was kind of unlike us this season, that first 15-20, that we just didn't seem to get going at all. And I seen twice, I think, in the first 20 minutes, as the cameras, obviously I'm watching it on Raith TV, the cameras panning to the ball, but at the corner of your eye, you're seeing Murray losing the plot going, because the players are just either following whatever they've worked on, or they've kind of lost track of who they're meant to be marking or whatever. And we just seemed to, that first 20, be all over the place. And it was kind of, I mean, what was it, the second minute, Dunfermline had that corner, which Dabrowski made a brilliant save down low, and then we were lucky that none of the Dunfermline players were that close to actually look to get a rebound off it as well. But now, once the first 20 had kind of gone past, I thought we settled into it a bit better, but we still, that whole first half, it just wasn't us at all. And I was saying to a few folk that it was just, we lacked everything that we've basically been doing all season well, which was touch and go, touch and move, sort of little triangles. Stanton was almost anonymous in that first half, and that's the first time I think you could say that all season. And I think I said in the group chat to the rest is that we need him driving with the ball if we've got any chance to cut them open. And I agree with you all saying about the back three as well. I think that Vaughan, he was obviously doing his best at what he sort of service he was getting, but at the same time, you can't be launching the ball up to somebody that's 5'8", 5'9". He's never going to be, never mind 2 centre halves, 3 centre halves. But I think the whole Benny going off actually suited us in the end, because I think in the end of the game, did Dunfermline not finish the game with one recognised centre half, and he had cramp and he went down injured as well. So, no, but overall, it was a bit of a confusing game for us, but it was the right result in the end.
John, do you want to come in there before we start getting into the right back end of the game? How did you feel the bulk of the game was going?
Yeah, like everyone else, I was a bit disappointed the way we started, and I met Blair at half time, and I did say to him that it looked like it was time to switch Liam Dick into centre half, get McGill at left back, and get Brown back in the game, and try and get a foothold in the game, because a lot of the time the midfield was being overrun. Poor thinking by the players, I thought, but and by me there. But I agree. I'm not sure if I was a Dunfermline supporter, perish the thought, but I would be very pleased that throwing Benedictus into a game like that yesterday, because it must have been a huge gamble. And my thoughts were, when I saw he was in the team, get boys running at him. He's not match fit. He's not played for about 6-7 weeks. But as the boys have said, he actually done quite well. And it is quite funny that he went off with another injury, which seemed to be a thigh injury. So hopefully he'll be out for a wee while. But as you guys all said, when we brought on Connolly, not so much Connolly, because I didn't think we used him. There was times he was going wide and we weren't getting the ball to him. But I think bringing a player like Easton on, and I'm not going to go down the usual route of that, of Dylan Easton, but he actually, you could see them kind of going, oh no, they've brought him on now, we're going to have another one. And it started to, the wee triangle patterns that you were speaking about, Scott, started to appear. And, and what turned out to be a tremendous result in the end.
That's it. And as you say, Benedictus, Scott, it was you who pointed out, I hadn't noticed until you said during the game that they weren't sending him up for corners. So obviously, even from the outset, they knew that he wasn't 100%. And it's obviously a gamble that he's taken to put him in. And I think that's one of the big advantages of playing that back three as well, is that you can accommodate for that. So if you look at, our back four, if either Murray or Brown was really struggling yesterday, absolutely you could get running at them. But they've got, two young boys either side of Benny. You can see how you can kind of get away with that. I suspect that's what was behind the thinking behind Smith and Vaughan kind of playing as a proper front two, but it just never came off. I said at half time, it looked like we had 10 men. It just looked like they had an extra man popping up again and again.
What was quite funny is I was speaking with the people behind me at the stand, and they mentioned that Breen going off was a bit of a disaster, but by God, they brought on Joe Chalmers, who is the biggest. I think it was Ian Latto described him at the game at East End. He described him as being like watching someone in a charity game. Now, that's an area that Ian Latto is fortunately an expert in. And yeah, what an absolute passenger of a footballer. Just obviously we'll come on to the goal in time. But when they brought him on, I was thinking, brilliant, excellent. Our players can totally, because he is very much, I've said before a few times, Dylan Easton, he gets the measure of a player and he'll size them up and down and then he'll go for it. Exactly what happened. But yeah, we touched on before about before the game that there really is a dearth of centre backs in Scottish football, and that's why you get clubs like us risking Keith Watson, and then you've got clubs like Dunfermline risking Benedictus, because it just feels like over the last 10 years, the centre-backs have completely dried up. You really struggle. Most clubs at our level struggled to find a centre-half that was of good experience. We got very lucky that we got Ewan Murray back, but yeah, very, very strange situation there that you keep seeing these centre-backs get rushed from injury, and then it ends up being a problem area because you're having to sub them off.
Yeah, definitely is. It's kind of counterproductive in the long term, but what other options have you got? I mean, we've seen obviously Scott Brown playing significant time at centre half. As you said already, Dunfermline finished 3 centre halves, 2 of them were midfielders as well. I was surprised actually that he kept that up at the point where you're down to 1 central defender. Why are you sticking with 3? And again, I think that helped create some of that space that, as you say, Easton's always looking for. And Joe Chalmers is so standoffish. Like, you see it in the goal. He's watching Easton and he takes a step back to get a better look at him. It's like, well, where are you going? Close him down.
Can't blame him. He's good to watch.
He is. He absolutely is. But it was,
especially from a Rovers
wild
perspective.
I was going to say, I felt yesterday I'm going. We're not obviously associated with the club, so we can be as brutally honest as we want to be. That's the worst I've seen us play in a long time. I thought we were, for the first 92 minutes, and we've touched on it, it was unlike us or whatever. I thought the game in itself was rotten. It was horrible. The interview during the week with Murray, Neil Russell obviously did the usual kind of, the manager interview. You ask the questions about, playing the occasion, playing the game and all the rest of it. I genuinely thought we played the game and they played the occasion at the beginning, which I think was the big difference between the two teams. They came out at 100 mile an hour. They were flying about everywhere, launching into tackles, trying to win the ball. It was like Derby Day, here we go. And we didn't really respond to it, which annoyed me at the start. So the first 15, 20 minutes, I'm sitting there going, boys, why are we not for this? Come on. And as the game went on, I started to think to myself, actually, we don't need, we've joked all week about lowly 7th place Dunfermline coming or whatever, and you watch them playing, and yeah, they created a few chances and Kev made a few good saves, but they never really carved us open. They never really kind of took us apart. It was just that kind of bluster. It just felt, like I say, just like a Derby Day kind of bit from one side. I think the thing with Benny, very quickly, because we've touched on the back 3 thing, throwing Benny in, I think you're absolutely right. He's got enough cover. But I think he offers something that the rest of them didn't. You could see a calmness kind of come into their defensive side, the goalkeeper as well. They seem to be a bit more confident, I think, just having him there. So from McPake's point of view, I can kind of see why you put him in. He might not last 90 minutes, and he clearly didn't. He's not going to match Vonnie for pace or whatever, But I think he brings the best out of those that are around him. But it was a really weird game, a really, really weird game of football.
Can I just say, sorry.
On you go, John.
Can I just say, the one person that did seem really up for it in our team was Ewan Murray. Ewan Murray was fighting for everything.
Was I?
Quite funny, because I did an interview with him after the game, and he describes himself as a meathead. He says, meatheads at the back. Because I said, somebody recently had said that you would head a brick wall for us to get a win. And he said, well, that's what us meatheads do. And but I thought he was really good starting the game. I thought he was the one that really showed that this is a derby match and it's a game I want to win.
I felt there was a few quite uncharacteristic performances throughout the side, though. I don't think Liam Dick had his best 90 minutes in a Rover shirt by any stretch. Sean Byrne stood out for me. He was kind of 6s and 7s. I thought he never really managed to get his foot on the ball. He never really managed to control the game. I thought Josh Mullen was a bit anonymous for most of it, to be honest. Some great deliveries, don't get me wrong, and we talked about that in the Dundee United game. He doesn't always offer you a lot, but he offers you those deliveries, and he did that yesterday. But yeah, it was just one of those games where it was like you say, it felt like they had the extra man, and I think that was just their I mean, they needed it. They're on the back of 2 defeats on rounds. It's a derby game, big crowd, all the rest of it. They needed yesterday probably more than we did.
I think
That's a really good point, and I think it's sorry, Robbie. I think you sometimes forget the sort of the wider context that exists for the other team as well. So we've been talking all this season about the Rovers winning narrowly, and it's felt more comfortable than otherwise. And that's the kind of mindset that we're in at the moment. Against my better judgment, I was talking to a Dunfermline fan last night, and he was saying that from the moment in the first half when Dubrovsky bodied Jakubiak as he came to close him down, as soon as that happened, he thought we're getting beat. It's just like from that point. Now that was early, but only about half an hour in. But he was just like, "This isn't our day," because that's where their kind of mindset is at the moment. They've lost 2 in the bounce. They haven't scored. So even though they had the better of the game, I think they were able to see some of their same old problems coming up. So we were at 6s and 7s, as you say. We looked like we were a man down. People all over the park playing really within themselves. And Dunfermline not really creating a huge amount. As you said, John, they get that corner right at the beginning. There was a couple other kind of half chances really in the first half. But to the level that the Rovers were playing poorly, really you'd expect the opposition to be doing a lot more. And I think probably all of us at half time were kind of really not worrying necessarily, but really thinking like we need to be playing a lot better than this.
Yeah.
But I don't think at the other end they were thinking we're all over them. We're definitely going to keep running over the top of them. I think they were thinking we're not taking any chances, and this is starting to go. And I wonder if their players were thinking the same thing.
Yeah. So I'm just going to jump in here, John, just to say that like it really extends on Blair's point. What he's touched on a few times is that this season you don't have to worry. You don't have to worry. And see coming towards the end of the game, because this is basically just an extension of Duncan's point. See when that clock hit the 87th minute point and Scott Brown gets that touch on the ball, and it could go in, but it skews wide and goes for a corner. See, at that point, I was thinking, we're going to fucking win this. I just felt we're going to go up the pitch, we're going to get something, because we've not conceded a goal in the touchwood, obviously, in the final 15 minutes of a game this season, something like that. See, when you see something like that, you can't help but feel, this squad's we're just going to do something that's going to nick it. And I wasn't worried going into the final 15, 20 minutes of that game. I genuinely felt we're going to snatch this and get a sucker punch. And that's exactly what happened yesterday. So, yeah, brilliant.
And
I was just going to say, Duncan, sorry. I was just going to say, do you remember, I think it was Christina on an earlier podcast said, there's going to be one game where Kevin's going to make his mark.
Yeah.
How many of us stood up and applauded when he came and did that, and was strong against the Dunfermline striker, who I'm not comfortable pronouncing his name. But Alex, yes. But he that was in some ways that was the making of him in that game yesterday. I think he came and he thought, no, this is it. I don't know if he spoke to one of the meatheads who said, you've got to come and do that. But that was good, to see.
I think you're right. We always talk about sliding doors moments in games, and that thing, if it can go one way or the other. I mean, Jakubiak just before that had bodied Sean Byrne off the ball, completely bodied him off of it, and you're thinking, bloody hell, he's strong. And he comes, and for Kevin Dubrovsky to come out, and in my head, I'm thinking Queen's Park. Oh my God, here we go again. He's going to come out, he's going to fluff it because he's worried about the hit. And he just wiped him out. And it was beautiful, right in front of the North Stand. Just, glorious.
Their fans were fuming about it as well. They were absolutely livid, which is beautiful to see.
Glorious.
That's it. It's one of these ones that because he gets it right, and completely genuinely, because he gets it right, he gets all the credit for the way that he judges it. Because I think your first instinct almost is like just rush out and take that, but he'd have to have taken it on the bounce. So he lets it bounce, and then he the ball's about 8 foot in the air, and he catches it cleanly and just smashes the boy out the way, which is yeah, absolutely delightful to see. And yeah, you're absolutely right. That's a real sliding doors moment. Even if that isn't a goal, if he misjudges that, the South stands anxious. He's in his own head. It can all go to pot at that point. But yeah, takes complete control. And as I say, I almost spoke to one of them, but the boy that I was speaking to said, like, that was the point where he was like, "We're getting beat today. This isn't happening." And I think to kind of stay on Kevin Dabrowski just for a second, that double save that he made in the second half, I think one thing, he gets down so well for someone his size. I think that might be really his key strength. It's the same with that one in the second minute at the corner kick. I think a lot of goalkeepers keep that with their feet.
Yeah.
Instead, he gets down to it, and someone on Pie Bobber last night was saying that double save, like, you'd expect any goalkeeper to make that save. You know, they're close to him, and I think the first one is quite close to him. But it's in that point, whereas it's like that kind of grey area where are you trying to get your foot across, are you trying to get down to it? And he gets down to it really, really well. And then he's back up to be in the right position for the second one. I thought that was excellent goalkeeping. I thought it was really kind of mean-spirited to try and take that away from him. I thought it did really well. Sandy, I think we've all had a chance to kind of give our thoughts on Kev Dabrowski previous to today. How do you feel about him the time that we've had him?
Obviously, I was at the Queen's Park game and he kind of had the little blunder, and I think he
Say no more.
quite unfairly got a little bit blamed for the other goal in that game as well. But he's obviously he's got his own style. He's very much palming balls out rather than something you might expect him to keep a hold of them. But he's obviously got fantastic reflexes. He's a great shot stopper. And as you say, he is fantastic just getting down. Ball's quite close to him, quite low down, which might look to the untrained eye being quite a simple one, but these balls can be quite awkward for keepers sometimes, I think. So, yeah, obviously it's still only a kind of quarter into the season. So I think so far he's done well. I think, although I was really disappointed in some of the Raith support when they were jeering him after his mistake in that game. I think possibly he's just made a concerted effort. Look, I'm going to grab this by the scruff of the neck and just show the fans what I'm capable of. And definitely, I think he does feed off the energy of the fans. You could see after one of his saves yesterday, he just had his fist pumped up to the south stand, and you can see what it means to him. That he's got the backing of the crowd again. So it's been really good to see him kick on from that point.
Just a delightful big guy to watch, isn't he? Just even when he's not actively having to do anything. Like that goal went in and he wasn't even swinging
right
on
in
the
the
bar.
fans.
He'd almost sort of monkey bars himself up onto the crossbar, and then right into the fans at full time and everything. That's just I just say I couldn't be a bigger fan of the guy. I really, really like him.
Duncan.
Yeah.
Can I ask one thing of Blair? There was an incident in the second half when the ball was played to his left foot and he kicked it, and there was a big puff of the pellets off the pitch came up, and I thought Blair will be having a hairy canary now, because that was at the beginning your big bugbear about him, that according to you he wasn't able to kick with either foot, but he managed to get it away up to the halfway line, and he is a cult hero already, isn't he?
Yeah,
he is. Can I respond?
Yeah.
I'm going to say I think you've been a tad unfair on me, John. I never said he couldn't kick with either foot. I said he looks uncomfortable kicking.
I think you said he was a no-footed football player.
No-footed tackle. You could be Axel.
In the context of looking comfortable kicking a ball was my context. I think it's fair to say kicking is definitely not his strength. But yeah, I agree, John. He got the ball away, and he's. Do you know what? I think you're absolutely right. He is a bit of a cult hero, and I think Sandy's picked up on a point that we've mentioned previously. He's so different, and I think having watched the Rovers as long as I have, I don't ever remember us having a keeper like him, and it's taking me a long time to feel comfortable. I mean, I really like the guy. He's a really good shot stopper. I just wish he would hold a bit more. That's literally all. I just wish he would hold some, because it gives me the heat.
Sorry, Robbie. It is noticeable as well. At the end of every game, Robbie Thompson's right onto him, and it's there. So the work that Robbie must be doing with him is tremendous. And the other week there, I saw Robbie's best pal, Scott Thompson, having a word with him as well. So it must be good that Robbie allowed that to happen. Didn't you, Robbie?
Which one?
You.
Aye. What a guy. But I think being on a podcast, I think it's a tricky one, because you've got to performances like yesterday. I think if we come away with that with a draw, or if we lose, then straight away we're automatically asking questions, and it's a very hard line. I was chatting with Matty, who does Long Bangers, which is a Hibs podcast, and it's a tough one because you're aware that you're conscious that as a fan, it gives you a bit of a higher voice in terms of like people will pick up on it, stuff can get clipped, it can get shared in terms of context. But then as a fan, you're within your rights to ask questions, but he's completely responded to it brilliantly. And I think as well, it says a lot about his mentality that he's been able to bounce back. And I feel like there's a bit of that within the squad. Ross Milne said before, a lot of people questioned him when he came in. He'd not had many games, and he'd gave away a penalty against Cali Thistle. And a lot of people, he almost got sort of tarred with a brush that sort of said, oh, he's not that great a player. But he's been so consistent since then. He's been excellent. And he's a fantastic wind-up merchant as well. Got to say that about him. So yeah, I think sometimes you've just got to remember that they are human beings, that there is, it's difficult because you do want to analyse things and you want to look at it, but at the same time, stick with the players. And I definitely felt that was a theme of yesterday. After we scored, they get that corner and everyone in that south stand was on their feet, getting right behind the squad. And that was a key feature behind as well, the sort of social media with the run up to the game. All the ex-players saying, just make sure you stick with the squad, stick with them. And it shows at the end. It shows so much at the end when you see those celebrations and you see the club talking about how we are doing something special and you can feel it. So yeah, I'm delighted for Kevin. I'm delighted for all the squad.
I think on Ross Milne, I'm going to put my hands up on that one, because you're absolutely right. When he gave away that penalty, was it in Cali Thistle?
Yeah.
I was really, because what I thought of that at the time was it was such a bad decision to try and make the tackle that he did. And I thought, this is going to be a nightmare, because he's not thinking about the game enough. He's not, it's not that he's made a mistake, it's that he's made a bad decision. And that can be a nightmare for a fullback, because you've got to be making decisions all the time. And actually, in pretty much everything that he's done since then, he's proved that it's the polar opposite. John, you mentioned at a previous podcast, he's the one, if you need an extra ball thrown on the park just to buy yourself 20 seconds to get back, Ross Milne's the one doing it. He, I think, is so switched on and thinking about it so much that he's been a real asset. I think in terms of pure technical footballing ability, is he up there with the very best fullbacks in the division? Probably not. Crossing aside, his crossing's excellent.
His first touch. He's got a first touch that honestly is light years ahead of this level.
But that's the full package. I think he's very, very good. He's been incredibly solid. Which, yeah, first couple of games when he first came in, largely based, as you say, on kind of preconceptions from his reputation. He's totally turned that around. Right, I think we've kept our powder dry for long enough. Do you want to talk about the goal?
Let's do
it. Scott, why don't you've had the sort of the clearest view, I suppose, having seen it on Raith TV. No audio, obviously, because I think they spiked the mics again. But well, talk us through it first of all, and then tell us how you felt about it.
I mean, I am quite well. In the end, I'm really happy that we did swap ends for that goal, especially. But no, I think we alluded to it earlier that once Easton had came on, it almost felt like the pass started to get slightly deeper because they realised, right, we've only got one recognised centre half, and even he's hobbling about. So you've got guys like, I think it was Otto and Hamilton had kind of dropped into like a back three. It was basically a back five because Coleman and Edwards were pretty much told, right, you're going to need to help them out instead of bombing forward like they were in the first half. But Easton and Stanton just started to get the sort of 1-2, getting a little bit of space. And then Robbie mentioned Chalmers coming on. He was just basically looking about like a headless chicken, going, what am I meant to do? Who am I meant to mark? And it was back to how we've been playing this season, of guys running about triangles, one touch, and then Stanton kind of does a sort of 1-2. Easton gets into the edge of the box, and then Easton's got him fronted up, and you're like, well, he's either going to try and clip this ball just in behind for somebody like Vaughan to run onto it, or he's going to have to beat him and shoot. I actually didn't even look at Stanton at the time because I think he had his guy pinned, but I thought the guy has got him covered. But he's managed to get the touch. I think he got a bit lucky with his back heel kind of flicking it back forward. And then as soon as he'd hit it, I might have looked more ridiculous if it didn't go in. But luckily it was only me in the house, but I'd already jumped up because of the angle, you could just see the keeper's not even getting it and it's going in. And then, no, it was, as you say, I think as soon, and obviously the guys have probably looked at it on the monitor in the booth that they're commentating in, and they already lost it by the time it had even crossed the line. And so, no, it was brilliant, and just it was great to see Stanton on the score sheet again, because it had been a couple of weeks since he'd probably scored or anything like that. But I'm just glad for him, because I know that he kind of went through a tough time before he came to the Rovers, and folk had kind of almost forgot about him in Scottish football because he went out to Ireland and everything like that. But no, it was yeah, our most favourite goal as it stands for in a derby.
I think, is that just 2 goals for the season, Sam Stant? Both 1-0 victories in Fife derbies? You'd take that.
I think so.
I think
Both in front of the big stand full of Pars fans as well. Beautiful.
Yeah, just really, really good stuff. Robbie, how did you see it?
Yeah, I mean, you see, I can't really remember too much about the goal because I just completely lost the run of myself when it went in, as I think that a lot of people did. I went back and I watched it on Raith TV, and I like listening to the commentary from Raith TV after. I'd advise, if you're a season ticket holder, get logged in on the Raith TV account on the website. You can use your season ticket there and go back and listen to Davey and Steve Tosh when they're talking about the commentary. And Stevie Tosh has a great point. He says, I play a load of golf. You never remember your performance. You only ever look at your scorecard. And that summed it up. That summed it up to an absolute T. It was just fantastic. A great goal. Really well worked. As Scott says, a bit of luck in there as well, but sometimes you just need that. And just fantastic celebrations, just jumping about, hugging people. And you can go through life, and you go through all sorts in life. You'll go through ups, downs. Maybe you're having a tough time at work. Maybe you've got relationship issues. Maybe you're having issues with your family, or you're struggling at school or university, whatever. See, if you go to a football game and you become invested in a team and you get a moment like that, there is nothing better than it, because you just completely forget about any problem that you've got in life. And there is no better way to do it, in my opinion. I think Rio Ferdinand once said that if you could bottle the feeling from a 90th minute winner, then you would be a billionaire, because if you could sell that, it would be something else. And yeah, just a complete euphoric experience. There's nothing like it.
That must be the only good thing that he's ever said, Rio Ferdinand.
It wouldn't surprise me, but I don't really care.
When were you speaking to Rio Ferdinand?
I'm going to start up my own former players association, John. Sorry, but I'm coming into the business. Well, he's not our former player, but
any former players of any stripe. The other thing with Stevie Tosh, I did the same as you. I went back and watched some of the full match replay, and just as Dylan Easton gets the ball in the kind of build up to the goal, Stevie Tosh goes, "Oh, Dylan Easton likes to play a bit of football," and he certainly does. Blair, as I say, obviously, an incredible goal. Did you, by that point, did you think there was any chance we were getting a late goal? And also, second part of the question, did you think there was any chance they'd sneak an equaliser after it?
So the first part, I wouldn't say I thought we were going to, but I definitely felt we were the more likely. I'd say from about an hour in, once the substitutions had happened, sort of 60, 65 minutes, we that was the first point where I felt like we really got a foothold in the game and we actually started to dictate play a little bit more. Without really creating an awful lot, though. That was my real concern, is that and actually one of my mates had said that if you were to put a decent goal scorer in their side, they would probably be pretty good, because they're really well drilled and like they kept their shape really well, and we really struggled to break them down. But at the same time, for the last half an hour or so, other than the kind of the double save, there wasn't really an awful lot for Kev to do. Like it felt like it was pushing more that way. So I wasn't massively surprised when we did score. But I wouldn't say I felt it was coming. I did definitely think we were going to concede. Not any reflection on the squad or the players at all. Just I think the universe hates me. So as soon as we score a 93rd minute goal, you just assume you're going to concede a 94th. Like that's just where my brain goes. And that's that thing of celebrating the goal was incredible. Celebrating the clearance, the header from the corner was glorious as well. It's like that. Yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. If you could bottle that feeling, it's amazing. I always think it's a little bit like, that feeling when you take a penalty and the goalkeeper saves it and their fans rush up. You get that roar from them and it drops to the striker and then he buries it and you get that rush of, and they sing. It's that glorious kind of to and fro that you get in football.
What's funny is you mentioned about like the corner, and you know how they talk about how the ball can get sucked into the net. That was the opposite. It was like a power dryer away from the net. It was basically, we're like, nope, get it away.
John, anything you want to add about the goal, and also give us your man of the match as well. Take us into that discussion.
I think I obviously, we're down in the south stand, you never really saw how good a turn it was from Sam Stanton. I know that, Scott, you said he got a bit lucky. And one of the great features about this season is having that young guy having a different camera where he's out there. And when they put that footage in, you see the way they move it about. But as you said, the finish was superb after he turned. What was it? Man of the match. My man of the match, I would go with Kevin. Kevin kept us in it at the right time, so I thought he did really well with his saves, and his double save was really good. And he's got an ability, whereas goalkeepers go down and they save it, but they push it out towards the on-rushing player. He always seems to push it. It must be when he was taught as a youngster to push it away from the goal. And that's a really good asset to have, isn't it?
I'm totally in agreement with you on that. I think it's very clear that from whatever early age, he's not been coached to catch the ball, but he has at least got that ability to really get rid of it. You see that especially with shots from distance almost. He gets down to them and he's pushing them well clear. It's almost like the shots that he saves go out for throw-ins rather than out for corners, because he's making sure he gets behind it. And it's very much one of these things. If you're not going to catch it, you have to deal with it that way. And he does seem to have that. Sandy, what about you, man of the match wise? Who did you think was up there for that one?
I think rightly, for having kept us in the game, Kevin Dubrovsky deserved the man of the match. But I think there were a few other players who did have a good, solid performance. Mentioned Ewan Murray before. I actually thought Scott Brown had a really good performance. It's obviously not his natural position, but obviously put in a good shift. Didn't really put a foot wrong, I didn't think. He also was playing a little bit more advanced towards the end of the game and put in one tackle I remember quite late on that was just a really good crunching tackle that just got the ball out of danger's way. Also thought Lewis Vaughan had quite a good game, although he wasn't really able to do what he would like to do as a sort of number 10. I thought his general, when a lot of passes were going astray and we were losing the ball a lot, I felt his retention of possession and bringing other people into the game was very good. But as I say, I think it'd be hard not to give it to Dubrovsky just for the kind of vital moments in the game where he kind of kept us in it.
I don't know if it warrants a man of the match, but I'd be inclined to give some sort of special award to Lewis Vaughan for that, like, pirouette into a pass about 10 minutes in. Yeah, it's delightful. Like, I've never wanted a move to turn into a goal so much, just so that you could have that extended clip. I don't really care who scores the goal. I just want to be able to keep that.
That was exactly what the boy next to me said. He's like, that really needed to be a goal just for all that had went into that move. So yeah.
On your point about Scott Brown, I'm the same. I thought by the end of the game, he'd really almost earned himself, certainly at least a place in this discussion. Because the first half, I thought he was being given a really torrid time by the movement of Lewis McCann and Alex Jakubiak. You said earlier, Blair, I think that's the first time I've really watched Jakubiak with any kind of real attention. And his movement's excellent, his strength is excellent as well. I'm not convinced he's a striker in that sense that we've had plenty of players who are like that as well, where you've got 2/3 of what you need. But I didn't realise this until after the game yesterday. I read that last season they scored fewer goals than Falkirk and Airdrie. And then the close season, they didn't bring in anyone. They brought in Jakubiak slightly later on. And I think that with that in mind, you can really see the evidence of that yesterday. They just don't have the goal scorer. And that's where I think you look at Scott Brown and you say, right, okay, so the movement was giving you bother, but over the course of 90 minutes, he gave up nothing. There was not one point where that movement turned into someone getting past them and getting a shot away. He tracked them everywhere. The couple of points in the second half where they threatened, there was that kind of sort of overhead kick clearance almost, where he keeps it away.
Beautiful.
It was excellent because there's so many different things that could go wrong there, and he just does exactly what he needs to do. A couple of the headers late on as well, where you'd rather it was the meat-headed Ewan Murray who was under them, but it's Scott Brown and he's dealing with them. I think over the piece, I probably would have leaned toward Ewan Murray actually as my man of the match, but I think Scott Brown, given that's not his position, I thought did incredibly well. I thought the thing for me is actually in the first half, I thought Ewan Murray was the one player who was trying to play football. Like actually, in that early period where we were panicky and really struggling to do anything, it was Ewan Murray was the one guy who was actually putting his foot on the ball, trying to take his time and look for something.
There was one notable exception to that, though, which I think is probably worth noting. So I think you'd spoken certainly about Ewan Murray first goal scorer. So I don't know if you'd sent him a text before the game, but the breaking out from the back four, which he did a few times actually, and like you say, looked really good. But he gets 55 yards from goal and thinks, "I'm shooting here."
Because that's Sean Byrne did the same, but for Sean Burns, it was like the box was quite busy and everyone had and you're like, actually, you've got a chance to have a go. Ewan Murray's, we had two men over on one side, and he just decided to have a go at it. We're just discounting him from the discussion entirely based on that alone. Just centre half shooting from 40 yards, immediate disqualification. Anyone else want to add anything to the man of the match? Pitch anyone else in or back anyone else up?
You've hit the nail on the head.
I think consensus then probably we'll go with the sponsors. We'll stick with Kev Dubrovsky with a couple of notable mentions. So we have allocated some time today to talk about the wider category of shenanigans that went on after the game and during the game, I suppose, as well. But before we do that, anyone want to add anything else about the actual game of football that took place?
No, can we move on?
Yes, excellent. Let's move right into, as I say, I've just, my notes literally, it just says shenanigans. which I think there was plenty for it. I mean, James McPake just baring his arse in the post match greeting about, wouldn't they be happy if my staff were doing that, and Ian Murray's there with the receipts up against the window, like, here's the video footage, just like some coaches hugging each other, having a lovely time.
I've said before, they are the worst club. Maybe it's just because of the bias of being in a derby with them, but they are so bad for moving the goalposts. My staff wouldn't do that. And then someone on Pie and Bovril puts Matty Todd, though, in the first derby in the League Cup. Like, what? How do you explain that one? They're all like, we wouldn't have our... Yeah, exactly. And then you look across the board, and he's done exactly the same up at Tannadice. He's done exactly the same up at Tannadice, as you mentioned there, Blair.
So I think
he's literally walked down the tunnel at Tannadice, past the Dundee United fans, and done the 1-1 signal to them, as if that's somehow like winning the World Cup or whatever. And he's having a go at,
they bottled it.
And he's having a go at a manager for celebrating a 93rd minute winner in a derby game. It's like baffling.
Yeah. Well, this is that. He says that his team wouldn't celebrate a win like that, which is fine because they've celebrated 2 draws so far.
Yeah, they didn't win, that's why.
Yeah, that. If Robbie, I know you and I both went and watched the kind of the post match footage and forensic detail.
Oh,
it's brilliant.
Ross Milne.
It's brilliant. It's like a kind of 30-second long animated Renaissance painting, as there's just like all these pockets of scrappiness going on. Which again, I would urge anyone to go back and the full match replay's got that all going on. And you get the added bonus of Davy Hancock and Stevie Tosh picking out moments of commentary on the fighting. And Stevie Tosh is desperate to go and get involved, which is really good.
Brilliant. Okay, Duncan, can I just, before we finish the go to the end of the game, I would like to propose the fact that Dylan Easton is not only the best player in the championship, but he must be in running for Scottish hide and seek champion this year. And it was tremendous, and they lost the plot with that, didn't they?
Beautiful.
They lost the plot.
Yeah, just I mean, really good from Dylan Easton. Just his innocent face is very good. Is the referee's forcibly turning him around to see his number, and he's like, I don't know what it is. What is on my back? How am I supposed to know? And Chris Hamilton's an angry wee guy, is he not?
Very angry, very, very angry. And what I particularly love is the fact that Easton, a few folk tagged him on posts on Twitter last night, just like, did he know about it? Was he on the wind up? And all he posted was 2 emojis, but just go and check them out. And they tell the story. They tell the story very nicely.
I think that was the best bit of the whole end of the game. I mean, there was loads of boys losing their shit, but to have a Dunfermline lifelong fan and Chris Hamilton cutting about like he's hacksaw Jim Duggan, trying to sort out everybody around him. Do you know what I mean?
And then he stomps off.
Oh, it was beautiful. And the thing is, he's coming down and he's trying to applaud the Rovers fans sarcastically, like this is some kind of victory for him. Oh.
But you know, there is an extra element to it. The fact is that he goes out with Willie McGregor's niece. So not Kevin's daughter, but the other brother, I can't remember his name. So Willie had invited him in after the game to come up to his lounge, to which he declined. So
brilliant.
The other thing I liked at that point with the corner kick, I don't know if anybody noticed this. I only saw one part of it in the highlights, and I saw the other part live. So the Dunfermline have got that corner, and there's a big rammy, and the ball is down in the corner, and it's somebody in the south stand at that point reaches down over the wall, picks the ball up, and just hoys it onto the railway track.
Aye.
So they're calling for the ball, and they're shouting back and forth, and for some reason, 3 ball boys have all grouped together at the halfway line. And each one of them is holding a football. And there's 2 players roaring at them, making the ball symbol, and all 3 of them are like, what? And sorry, I don't follow. I'm not sure. Like these 3 7-year-olds standing with a football each. and I don't know how it might be Joe Chalmers, eventually runs over and he just, the closest one to him, just drops the ball at his feet.
Yeah.
Pick it up and go down. Like, incredible stuff. Brilliant, brilliant work.
Great redemption arc for the ball boys as well after the incident where one ended up back on the park with when we were on a counter attack and Jakubiak kicked the ball right at the ball that was in play. But yeah,
Which
fair
is a
play.
stonewall yellow card, by the way. I was raging at that. That was so
to be fair, see when that happened, that Josh Mullen should have just tapped that ball out if he wanted to play. Like it wasn't even. He could see it right in front. I was like, why even bother him with the throw-in? It's obvious that ball's on the pitch.
I was most impressed that he managed to actually hit the ball that was in play.
Yeah,
that was the most accurate pass of the afternoon, and that's exactly that's what they would be talking about if they'd got the result. Because I thought that was just I've only got respect for that. That was an excellent kind of intervention. But just really, really good stuff. And the thing, Robbie, you flagged it up to us that Dunfermline allegedly, I don't know how true it is, I assume it is, had pinned up Rovers tweets during the week in the training ground. Like, come on, lads, you're making it far too easy. Like that, I've always felt, not just because it happens to have happened here, that is just such a sign of being rattled. Like, it's absolutely the opposite of what football managers say, which is we'll look after us, we're not worried about anybody else. You know, but James McPake said at the start of the season that other clubs are making a lot of noise. We'll just get about our business. We'll do it in the park. Like, well, how's that going for you, James?
It's actually, you kind of think that this season, or I wish, I know they did it with Hearts a couple of seasons ago, like stuff like when you see or hearing that, like stuff like this happening, you go, oh, I wish BBC were doing like a all or nothing on them right now. Just to hear what he's saying about it and then just pinning it all up the changing room and everything, what we've been saying. I mean, and also that picture at full time of Vaughan and he's thrown. He's thrown that it might be heated. I know Christina might be wanting that for the main stand, but that was just sensational.
It's just
the fact that they had two former Rovers players bowed down at his feet as well. And that's been, we were talking about it in the club after the game. That's at least a week in the making. That just not been knocked together. And
whoever the animator is, they've done sensational work. But the good news for James McPake is that if you do want a copy of that in future, the club probably will make it a poster that you can stick up in your training ground and you can continue to be angry. So there you go, James. Try not to beef with too many 16-year-olds on Twitter.
I think it is honestly worth pointing out as well. I think James McPake takes a lot of the blame for us winning that game. Like you mentioned it at the very beginning about the substitutions, and I know that they've got injuries and stuff. So the substitutions in the back four or the back five, sorry, fair enough. Like he's got no control over that. He has to drop that 0-2 into defence or whatever, unless he goes to 2 at the back. Fair enough. But see the moment where he takes off, is it Owen Muffet, the boy they've got on loan for?
I thought you were excellent yesterday.
That was the moment I thought to myself, here, we've got a chance. It didn't matter who he was bringing on. He was their only threat. He didn't look injured. He didn't look tired. Like, why are you taking him off? He was the only player that was going to get any joy against us.
Stevie Tosh said that on commentary, actually. He says, this is baffling to me. He's like, this is the only guy that's doing anything and he's running about creating everything and yet he's coming off. It was like 61. It was 61 minutes, I'm sure. It wasn't even that far into the game.
He looked really good.
I mean, what for me I find quite interesting, I've never been a fan of McPake, and when we were linked with him, I was generally quite concerned. And then I was very happy that we got Ian Murray, because I felt Ian Murray's just a better manager and had more of the experience that we needed as a club at that point when we didn't have this new board in place. But the optics to come out the back of that and go straight into the Courier Sport, the press conference. Now, you have two options. You can just say, heat of the moment stuff, it's just daft, we can move on, which is what Ian Murray's done. He's came across that way. Nobody thinks Ian Murray's better. Nobody thinks Ian Murray's fuming. But James McPake, he's lent into that. And now that's his thing to own. He's got to be the one that controls that. And 3 defeats on the bounce, maybe feeling a bit of the pressure. Again, they last season, they waltzed to the title, which is fair play. But he's getting a taste of his own medicine with what the derbies were like for them against for Falkirk, because that's how they were winning those derbies, very tight games, 1-0s, 2-0s, etc. But again, we don't need to go too much into him, because just in general, the feeling about our club is just sensational. And I think it's probably worth touching upon if we're going to stick with the social media stuff. You think about the number of under 12 fans that we've got that have came to the grounds over the last bit, and we've obviously seen this rise in numbers that has came up. How many of those fans are going to be sitting there in 5, 10, 15, 20 years talking about a Sam Stanton winner in the last minute and how that made them feel? I don't think people realise how big the impact of that is in terms of the long-term development. You can have all your schools, school tickets, your sort of community development, all that stuff. See, if you add in that 90th minute winner in a derby, which I can't remember the last time that we had a 90th minute winner in a derby. I sort of posed the question on WhatsApp, and I don't know if it's happened before, but
I don't know.
the experience that they'll get from that just is going to give them a lifelong link with the club.
That's it, and we talked about it in an earlier episode of this podcast and talked about the social media stuff, and it's like you will look stupid sometimes. It kind of hasn't really happened yet this season, but with the stuff pre-match and all, of course it's going to get thrown back in your face if you get beat, and sometimes you will get
back,
beat.
isn't it?
Exactly, but like it's a good laugh. And it's fine, and it's much funnier if it's winding up the opposition manager, because it's one of these things where I can't imagine that Ian Murray really has much of an idea of what's going on Twitter during the week, because he just doesn't strike me as the kind of guy who cares.
Yeah.
Just doesn't seem like he's bothered. It seems like if Dunfermline had tweeted something about the Rovers during the week, I'm not convinced he would have noticed. And because that's not who it's for. Like that's not whoever's sending these tweets to the Rovers are not like, oh, I bet this winds James McPake right up. They're just trying to get a bit of engagement. It's for the Rovers supporters, and absolutely it's an added bonus if it's then being cast up by the opposition's manager. But it's just a good laugh. I'm so for it, and I would be exactly the same if we'd get beaten. It was being thrown back. And categorically, I mean, if we get beat later in the season, we get beat 2-0, and Kyle Benedictus and Craig Whiten score the goals.
Yeah,
like of course that's going to be cast up, and there'll be people saying that graphic after the game is to blame for it and all this kind of stuff. But that's just a good laugh, isn't it? Well, that's fundamentally it's about entertainment, and I was thoroughly entertained by every aspect of yesterday.
Duncan, can I just say that, do you not feel that part of it is a deflection tactic from McPake? Now, you were the one that said earlier in an earlier podcast, if you look at Dunfermline, they were poor in doing their business in the summer. They brought in a lack of players. We did everything right. We got players in early. We got the right type of players in, and we've shown them up for what they didn't do. And I think this is him deflecting away from another situation that's not gone their way.
I think he might be under a bit of pressure, actually. 3 defeats in the bounce, 3 games without scoring a goal. I mean, we talked about the wider context of a derby game and stuff. Everybody knows form goes out the window when it's a derby. It just does. Anything can happen. Do you know what I mean? So if this is a regular run of games, you know, you've won one, lost one, drawn one, or whatever, and it's a derby game, managers always have the ability to come out and say, do you know what? It's a derby. We write it off. We move on to next week. I mean, Ian Murray's even said that Dundee United not having a derby is probably an advantage for them in this league, because if Dundee's here, that's at least 4 games in the season that they're going to be experiencing that kind of thing. That the derby can be a great thing, but it can also hinder you. But I don't think there's any greater way to emphasise how shit you are doing than losing your 3rd game on the trot without scoring a goal to your nearest rivals in the 93rd minute, having potentially been the better side.
And I think, John, I think you're almost certainly right. I think it is a deflection tactic, and I think it's a bad one. I think just generally, again, not just because this is Dunfermline, but just it happens to be what we're talking about. If your manager's under pressure, when you start getting drawn into the nonsense, it's never a good sign. like again, Robbie, you said it. If he'd come out after that game and gone, listen, I thought we were the better side for most of that, but we didn't take our chances like we should have done. Much like the last game, we need to work on that. We need to be more clinical. We've got no points for these games where we really should have come away with more. I mean, not that we're his target audience. We'd have had nothing to talk about.
Yeah.
His own fans certainly wouldn't have had anything to object to either. But instead, he's maybe he's trying to kind of build this sort of siege mentality or whatever it is. I really don't think it works. I think the more you're talking about stuff that's not football, especially when it's so easily disproven, where you're making these insinuations like, oh, they were misbehaving, and within minutes, Ian Murray's like, I've just watched the video, there's nothing wrong, and then half an hour later, it's on the internet, there's a video, there's nothing wrong, and he just looks twice as stupid as he did beforehand. It's odd territory to get yourself into, and as you say, 3 games in the bounce, they've not won any. They've lost all 3. They've not scored a goal. They go to Morton on Friday night, which we're about to talk about that in a second anyway. How difficult it is to go to Capital at any time. And then after that, they've got Dundee United at home.
Also Friday night on the TV.
Easily, you're looking at 5 games. It certainly wouldn't take a huge leap of the imagination that you're 5 games without a win or 5 losses on the advance.
It's all fun and games when you're beating teams that you should be beating in League One, and you've got your home support, your wee feral corner, who are enjoying themselves, and you're talking about this, that, and the other. But see, when you get up to this level, and it's a bit more cutthroat, and like days like yesterday, you're going to get days like yesterday where you get a player of Sam Stanton's caliber just slipping past and getting a goal in the final minute, and you're probably sitting there raging because you feel you've been robbed. But that's where you're at now, lads. You're going to have to fucking deal with it.
Pin that on your wall, James McPake.
Pinning an MP3 to his wall.
Yeah.
Excellent, right? I think that was an excellent note to leave that behind for the time being. I suspect we will keep on talking about this game through the rest of the season. But just because there is a game on Tuesday night, so let's just have a little bit of a brief kind of look forward to this one. So the Rovers go to Capello. Morton, a late winner for them on yesterday as well, 87th minute, I think, to beat Ayr United 1-0 at Somerset. Funny team, Morton. Just very difficult to pin down. I mean, I know they get awfully chippy about it, but they are the most, if you're going to be charitable about it, will we call it streetwise team in the division?
I would call them shithouses, but
yeah, and I'd be so much more charitable, or be inclined to be charitable, if they would just own that, because there's nothing wrong with it. If that's what you're going to do, go and do that. It's fine as long as it works. If it doesn't work, you bottom of the league and you keep denying it. So, I don't know why that's the option they've chosen to go with, but will be interesting. They have also, interestingly, I saw, switched to a back 3, which I'm only mentioning because it's for exactly the reason that we mentioned about Benedictus. They've got Kirk Broadfoot in that back line, and they've decided he now needs 2 pals just to try and keep him right. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes, whether they stick with that, because I thought he was brutal in the game at Starks Park. And if I'm Lewis Vaughan or Callum Smith, I am running to get on the bus on Tuesday night, or Tuesday afternoon for the game on Tuesday night, if Kirk Broadfoot's playing against me, because there is a player that you can turn inside out with really not much effort. But as you say, they are bottom of the league, but they won on Saturday, so by no means an easy game going to Capello. Blair, I think you're heading to this one. What are your thoughts to this?
I'm going through on Tuesday night. I don't really know, to be honest with you. Again, I'm a little bit concerned about bodies. Obviously, only 2 kind of senior players on the bench yesterday for our emphatic 1-0 win against Dunfermline. But the worry going on Tuesday night is, Easton came on and came off. I don't know how much to read into that, whether it was about getting a defender on for the corner, or if it was about wasting time, or if Easton's kind of feeling it a wee bit. I don't know. It does kind of it worries me. It's a place that we've never, I don't know, we've never had a huge amount of joy in. Like we've won games and stuff, but it's a stuffy place to go. Pitch, I'm imagining, will be quite heavy. There'll probably be a bit more rain between now and then as well. So, yeah, I don't know. I think it's one of these games that, at the current state of play, we should win. Like, we have to be going into this expecting to win the game. I think that's where we're at. But I think with the expectation comes the pressure that goes with that. But yeah, I'd like to see us win, and I'd like to see us keep another clean sheet. Actually, would be a bonus.
I think it's obviously still very early days in the season, but if we don't win that game, you basically calling the title for Dundee United. Yeah, I'd be inclined to, just the way they look at the moment. Anyone else want to come in on that, or wider thoughts on the game on Tuesday?
I mean, Morton are just, I'll be brutally honest in my assessment, I just think they're an absolute gang. I don't think, and this will probably, again, I'm putting myself into clipping territory of sound bites, but I think that the Emery's not as good a manager as he's cracked out to be. I think that they ranted and raved about how good Grant Gillespie was last season when he scored about 50 penalties. Robbie Muirhead will probably turn up and play like prime Didier Drogba, because that's what he does. He just thoroughly lumbering forward who can just pull out wonder goals left, right and centre. It's a game where you just know what's coming. You know 100% what's coming. They are going to be up to all their antics, stuff like diving about off the ball, complaining, leaving tackles late, etc. It's a tricky place to go at the best of times. Off the back of a derby, you always get the feeling that there might be a hangover, which has happened historically. When you play big games, you go into the next one and you feel it. So yeah, it's going to be a very tricky game, to say the least. And as Blair rightfully touches on, with the bodies that we've got, hopefully we'll maybe see an appearance of some of the players that have been out, but you just get the feeling it's going to be the same squad, and it is going to be, even though it's bottom of the league away, it might be a bit of a difficult ask, but all we can do is just stick behind the players, and just, if they can get a result on Tuesday, then we can move forward and we can just focus our efforts. So see how things go.
Yeah, definitely. I can't say I'm expecting anyone else back for this one. I think Murray had said that Keith Watson and Jack Hamilton, I got their names right this time, are supposed to be back training kind of start of the week. I can't see there's any chance that they're coming back for this one. So hopefully, as you say, Dylan Easton was just a tactical change as opposed to anything too serious. And he's at least an extra body back that's ready to get some minutes together. But I wouldn't be surprised to see Aidan Connolly come in. I don't think the kind of Scott McGill experiment particularly worked yesterday, which I don't think is any fault of his. Once again, he's been asked to play somewhere else. We're getting towards a point. I remember there was a point where John O'Shea had to go in goal for Man United, and it completed all the positions. He played in all sort of 11 roles for Man United. I feel like Scott McGill's getting towards that.
Yeah.
For us, and I think if I know I bang on about this all the time. If we had a sort of marauding left back, you could play Scott McGill wide left, and then he can kind of shuffle inside and look for the man on the overlap. But Liam Dick's not going to do that. You're asking Scott McGill to do an awful lot on that side. So I wouldn't be at all surprised to see Aidan Connolly come in there. But there's not going to be a lot of extra bodies coming in for that. But we will obviously be back again on Thursday night, and we'll talk about whatever happens against Morton at Capello.
I think interested. I'm just going to say, just while we were chatting, I had a wee look at their results. You know, the last time Morton scored twice in a game, other than in the Mickey Mouse Cup, was it Stark Park?
Was that against us?
Aye.
They've literally scored nothing or one in every game since, other than, like I say, they beat Elgin 2-1 and they beat Kelty Hearts 4-1 in the Challenge Cup. But that aside, it's and they've had some pretty resounding defeats as well. You know, the 3-0 at home to Arbroath, 4-1 at home to Partick Thistle. Like, there's a few in there, so got to be hopefully.
It'd be interesting to see how much of that is are they one of these teams who are much happier playing away from home? And actually, is it when they're at home there's a bit of pressure on them that they struggle? I mean, fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Right, but to kind of bring us home for today's episode, we're going to move on to, as we always do, move on to our big question for today. And what I'm looking for you today, gents, is I'm looking for you to give me your favourite sort of micro moment from yesterday. So just your favourite snapshot from yesterday. So whether that was part of the game itself, or something that happened in the stands, something that happened afterwards, just your favourite thing that happened yesterday. And Robbie, let's start with you, please.
Yeah, for me, it was probably just the social media and just the general wind-upness of the after the game. And you see the photos, and it's stuff like, you look at the photo where they're running off to celebrate, and you can see it in the highlights when you look at the sort of fan cam split with the video of the goal. There's a guy on the third, the second closest set of steps to the railway stand in the south stand, if you get where I'm at. If you look at the photos, and I mentioned this on Facebook, there's a guy, and it's absolutely brilliant. He's got his young daughter with him, who could only be maybe about 2 or 3 or something like that. And the goal goes in, and he completely, 90% of his mental capacity is, oh my God, we've scored a 90th minute goal in the derby. But then there's a final 10% that's remaining as he picks up his daughter and has to run down the stairs with her, holding on to her, because he's celebrating that goal so much. I just loved seeing just the reaction to overall to the sort of, obviously the stuff with the poster after the game, just in general, just seeing the content that got put out, and just how happy everyone was, because there's no better feeling than it. So that was for me. Yeah.
Excellent. Sandy, how about you?
So there were a couple of different moments which were particularly good for me. I think a couple of minutes before Sam Stanton scored the winning goal, I was saying to the fellas next to me that the chances that Dunfermline have had, like, there were chances that they really should have taken, but they've not. And then for just literally a couple of minutes later for Stanton to take his chance, and just the feeling of that sort of 94th minute winner, obviously, as what I would say was the biggest high for me. But then what really stood out to me, which has happened more than once this season, it was to see Callum Smith and Ross Millen right down towards the south stand again, given the support back to the crowd that have given them the support through the game. It's just always really encouraging to see the players give it back from what they've received from the crowd, which was really nice to see again.
Perfect. Let's see, John. Let's come to you next, please.
My bit would be something I've never really seen in the past, and that's the reaction to the goal going in by our directors. Did anybody see that? They were cuddling, jumping. They just looked like they were one of us in the crowd, and it was quite amazing to see. You know, the euphoria had spread into the directors.
The photo of John Potter as well. And
Martin
Oh,
Granger.
yeah, that's
incredible.
as well is now that they'll be upset that somebody reacting like that to a goal so late in the game.
It's
Yeah.
You can't
Dylan
be running
Easton.
downstairs.
Yeah, Dylan Easton as well goes straight for John Potter, which
Yeah.
again
Yeah.
we talked a lot in the last episode about the importance that John Potter has clearly had and the influence he's had, and I think that speaks to it as well. That
man, we cleared Dunfermline links, loyalties, whatever you want to call it. Like, just losing himself in that moment is glorious.
But that's like because the goal goes in and there's 8 Rovers players who go for the dugout. Kevin Dabrowski climbs onto his own crossbar for reasons that I do not understand.
Ross Miller.
Dylan Easton goes for John Potter in the main stand, and also full credit to Tony Fimister for turning around and taking that photo of Dylan Easton. That's a real photographer's instinct. But yeah, Ross Millen is the 11th man, and he actually runs past, because obviously he's the right back. He runs past all of his teammates to head down for that northwest section.
And how good a feeling must that be? You're getting pelters for obviously 90 minutes, and I know that Ross isn't like one for sort of like Twitter or anything like that, but you get pelters for 90 minutes about this and that and the other, and how shite you were and how you're a scumbag, etc., etc. And then to be able to have that experience of just going, nope, I'm going straight, making a beeline, just going to completely wind you up, just get it right up you. So yeah, fantastic work, and I'm all for it.
And just because you mentioned cuddling, John, I'm going to give you my moment as well. So I sat next to my dad at the football, and when that goal went in, I just, as everybody did, I leapt in the air and I turned to give my dad a big hug. And he was so shocked that we'd scored the goal, he was still sitting down. So he was basically just looking like, oh, like, so. But I turned and I nearly just hooked the guy who was on the other side of him, because I went right over his head.
Oh dear.
And that's just one of those kind of wee snapshot moments that I nearly tumbled down the stand, that just in the aftermath of that. The moments that you get.
Before we wrap up as well, I've got to give a mention to Dario Valenti, who I sort of mentioned this on WhatsApp as well, but I bumped into Dario, or he came along and was just chatting about the podcast, and we were talking about the tackle beforehand. Now, Dario, Sandy, who sits behind me, he knows them as well, and he was asked for his prediction before the game, and his prediction was, my wife is going to go mental. And I think we all went mental in the end. So that's maybe a story for you. So
let's see. Blair, let's come to you for your moment, please.
So mine is kind of a wider thing, but it was kind of encapsulated. So we didn't come to the ground until pretty much for kickoff, which is unusual for us. We were meeting with a kind of bigger group of guys that wanted to go to the game, so we couldn't go to Macmillan Club before the game. So we were in the Duchess, a few pints before the game, and the northwest section were getting escorted along Link Street by the police, and kind of disappeared along Link Street just in front of us. So we come out and we're walking along Link Street just after them, and obviously in amongst a whole load of Dunfermline fans who don't know we're Rovers fans, but I don't really care anyway. They're all like 15 and, do you know what I mean, think they're as hard as nails. So we're walking along and it's dirty Rovers bastards and scum and all the rest of it. And then you get into the game and they're giving it big licks for 90 minutes in that bottom corner and all the rest of it. And social media that Robbie's picked up on, and they all kind of pile in on it and all the rest of it. And my big thing is the Dunfermline fans who love to claim they don't care. It's that we don't really care about you. You're not that important. So I'm gonna take a wee gamble, because I don't think there'll be any Dunfermline fans that are listening to this. But if you have, and you've got to this stage in this podcast, this is directly to you. Get it round you. I am 100% here for it. I love the rivalry. I love hating the pars and everything else that goes. I taught for years in Dunfermline, and used to noise up the kids, and the kids would give me it back and all the rest of it. I love the rivalry, and I love the fact they pretend they don't care, and they are seething.
I had that walking down Pratt Street as well after the game. Kirkcaldy's a shithole, I want to go home. And I was just I couldn't help myself. There was like 5 of them and I was on my own. And I was just like, fucking hell, you aren't taking that 8th place very well, lads, are you? And then they're all, oh yes, Becky, man. And they start off and then they're giving it the whole Green Street, the wee dance thing, eh? And I was just like, oh my God, man. Like, just settle down. Just settle down and just accept your place. Just accept your place. They were giving it, oh, your mortgage must be 250 quid a month. Like, man, you're
really specific.
Yeah. I mean, I would be quite happy if my mortgage was 250 quid a month, because I'd be saving so much money. But I don't think they know what a mortgage is.
Patter. That's
really bizarre. Really bizarre. But
excellent.
Here for all of it.
I know, 100%.
Scott, how about you? What did you enjoy most about yesterday?
Oh, to be honest, it was just the full-time whistle. But no, I actually, you've already spoke about it, but see later on last night when it came through that picture at John Potter, and I sent it to a mate of mine who's a big Pars fan. I just sent it to him because as soon as it was announced the takeover was happening and that John Potter was coming to the club in the summertime, all we were getting was, Agent Potter's coming to sort out the wee team and everything. And I just sent it to him and just went, Agent Potter, he was seething at the fact that he's meant to be this guy that loves Dunfermline he can love his time at there, but it just shows you that he cares about where he's working at that moment in time, and then that we've scored a 90th minute winner, and he's just, you could see, like, I don't know if he's got like an earpiece in or something, because he's got the walkie-talkie in his hand, and it's almost like getting yanked at his ear as he's trying to run down the stairs, and then it's just that whole scene after the goal just is the favourite part of yesterday.
Fantastic. Well, I tell you what, I know for a fact we all enjoyed our afternoons yesterday. I hope everybody has enjoyed listening to this episode as well. If you do want to see more kind of Twitter beef, Robbie has the keys to the social media account, and you can see his best efforts. So you can see that, as I say, that's at ONNN Podcast on Twitter. If you are listening to this episode and you would like to see our faces, that's weird, but you can actually do so on YouTube. That's at Oh No 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 Podcast. We will leave it here. We will be back on Thursday night into Friday morning to look back at whatever's happened at Capello, and we will see you then. But for now, we will say goodbye and thank you for listening.
Bye-bye.
Bye, folks.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you. See you later.
Fuck the Pars.